Okay, hey everybody, Teching 101 here, and welcome back to BAN-KAST Episode 4. And hey, if you forgot about anything that happened in the previous 3 episodes, it's okay. Bleach, the 1,000-Year Blood War arcs got you covered with the Bleach playback. Yes. Also, keep in mind, the whole naming scheme for every chapter of the Bleach manga, Kubo really likes this, and he even did this with Zombie Powder, I think. He names his chapters as if they would be tracks on a CD. So they would be like songs in an album, because Kubo is a huge music fan, okay? So in the first episode at the very end, we had Bleach Rewind, and now we have Bleach Playback. Playback could very well be the name of a chapter in and of itself, and it would have been fine. So yeah, I'm not going to go too into this because, literally that's what BAN-KAST is literally a breakdown of every episode. But it is kind of nice that they do have these. These will probably be sprinkled throughout the entire arc. So this is just briefly recapping the first 3 episodes of the anime. Here's Eburn showing up, trying to steal Ichigo's Bankai. This is actually something I forgot to bring up in the last episode, where after Killhei absorbs Ion, and he takes out the Trace Bestia, Sung Sung Apache Mila Rose, Orihime Chad begin to get absorbed as well. That's when Ichigo swoops in, because I guess while Ion was just Hulk smashing Killhei, Ichigo was just off to the side, very politely just watching it happen with the popcorn, like at a wrestling match or something. But when things started to go south and Killhei absorbed it with Sclavre, that's when Ichigo popped in his Bankai and destroyed the halo, the disc thing that was on Killhei's head that he actually used to absorb the Reishi of Ion. And so Ichigo figured out that, oh, if I destroy that disc on your head, then, I'll be able to defeat you. You won't be able to use Sclavre anymore. An additional thing about Sclavre, this is the only time I believe it's utilized in the entire last arc. If I am wrong about this, please let me know. But the act of using Sclavre to absorb another spiritual body in the way that Killhei does it, where he actually incorporates the body into himself, which is what he does with Ion. Ion is this big hulking brute. He absorbs that mass, and then he gets his muscles and his teeth, and he gets Ion's eyes appear on his wings. It's sort of like the Quincy's have the ability to fuse, or not really fusion, it's more of subjugation of Reishi, okay? I believe that is the only time we ever see that move utilized in that way. And, it's honestly kind of sad, because think of all the really cool things you could do with that. You know what I mean? I think the problem with Sclavre is that in order for it to work, the person that's being absorbed is literally absorbed. Ion is gone. Ion literally got ripped apart at, the molecular level. Because in the Bleach universe, molecules exist. They're like spiritons as atoms or whatever. So they have they have an equivalent of protons, but they're spiritons, and they make up Reishi and Ryatsu and everything like that. Or rather, Reishi is the actual physical material. Ryatsu is the aura it outputs. Okay, there's a lot of terminology here, but the point is, in order for a Quincy to actually do that again, somebody's gotta die, and they gotta die at the molecular level. So it would be cool if a Quincy used Sclavre on let's say Komamora, and the Quincy obtained Komamora's bulk and muscles and fangs. But in order for that to happen, Komamora would have to die. And so that's not cool. So I think that's the reason why we don't really get to see Sclavre as much, because if that was going to happen, then that character is kind of irretrievably just gone forever. At a molecular level, not even oh, you ripped off an arm or something like that. Although it's Kubo we're working with here, you could have done something. You could have had Kubo have, a Quincy use Sclavre on Komamora. I don't know why I'm just using Komamora as an example here. Poor Komamora is just getting completely eviscerated in this version of events. But imagine if Bambietta used Sclavre and only absorbed Komamora's arm. All right, and so maybe then Bambietta gets a wolf arm or something like that to use. That would be cool. Maybe not the entire body, and then Kubo always loves to lop off arms of characters. But at any rate, that's the Sclavre ability. And so the episode ended, episode 3 ended with the Quincy's arriving in the Seirete with their abilities to just kind of pop in out of nowhere. That'll be explained a little bit later, but as the title of this episode implies, it has something to do with the shadows. So we have Jugram Hashwolf here, Sternritter B, the balance. He has arrived on the scene, and he's like, oh, do not worry, Shinigami. We will purge all of you shortly. And then we have this awesome aerial view of the Seirete. This is not something we got to see in the manga. This is just really cool to see it from this angle, to see all of the Seirete just raised in blue flame. By the way, this is a thing. Has it ever actually been explained how exactly they're doing this? How they're summoning these giant pillars of blue reishi? So, the Quincy's Voltstandig, when they go into that form, it creates a giant pillar of light. We even saw it in the last episode with Killhei. And at the top of the pillar, it kind of creates a cross, and then that's when they go into their Voltstandig. But none of the Quincy's are in their Voltstandigs yet. They're not in their holy forms yet. Okay, this is just them erupting in flames and just appearing out of it. So I just realized it was never really explained, like, is that something that they have to use an ability for that, or is that like a tool that the Quincy's use to just ignite the area around them in blue fire? I'm not really sure. Anyway, this is the Kokurio Gate. This was the Eastern Gate, the Blue Stream Gate. This is where Hajomaru was alongside, or was it Kajomaru? Hold on a second. I already forgot the dude's name. Let me pull it up here. That's why we have the manga chapter in front of me here. Let's see. He was Hidetomo Kajomaru. Okay, I think I combined his first name and his last name into Hajomaru. Aizen's look-alike. Diet caffeine-free Aizen. There we go. This is where they were at. And as you can see, down there, there's some bodies. There's some Shinigami there that have kind of been, they're just sleeping. So we cut over to the 12th Division, and we see Akon here. Now, this is kind of a big deal. I need to break down some numbers here for everybody. Okay, Akon says there are over 1,000 dead in just 7 minutes. For those of you that do not know the numbers of exactly how many Shinigami are there, how many Shinigami are in the Gotei 13, this was a number that was actually given. Now, I should start this with a caveat. Just because this number was given, it doesn't mean that Kubo always adheres to it. The number was given in a Bleach data book. I believe Souls, which I think was the first Bleach data book that ever came out. And it was actually given that every division of the Gotei 13 has a little bit over 200 members, and that includes everybody. So that is, you have the one captain, the one lieutenant, you have the seated officers that go up to 20. However, you can share seated officers. Like, the most popular example of this is Kione and Centauru from the 13th Division. They were both third-seat officers after Kaien died. But there was also that one dude that Orihime and Uryu ran into in the Soul Society arc that was like the 20th seat of Squad 9, but he mentioned that there was like 15 other people that also were the 20th seats. So, like, you can have more people, and I imagine as the number goes up, there's more people in that seat. But then there's just unranked officers. They're just foot soldiers, okay? And they make up the bulk of the divisions. And so there's a little bit more than 200 of them. In the data book, it also gave that the standing force of the Gotei 13 is around 3,000 Shinigami. So, with those numbers in mind, over 1,000 dead in just 7 minutes. In 7 minutes, 1/3 of your entire standing army has been annihilated. That's not good. I don't know if anybody knows a lot about historical battles and warfare and crap, but, like, if that were to happen in any sort of real-world sense, that's a rout. That's just evisceration right there. That is like, there is, and Akon even says it here. He's like, there is no way we can beat these guys. And also, by the way, there are no foot soldiers. Well, there are foot soldiers in the Vandenreich. We don't see them yet. They're called the Soldat. They don't show up until a little later. But right now, there are only Sternritters that are attacking, and I think there's about 16 of them that attack the Seirete this time around. We don't get to see all 16 of them, but I think we only get to see like 8 or 9. But there are 16. It was confirmed later as Akon reads the numbers. And so that's just the damage they can wrought. Now, granted, those 1,000 dead, Izuru is included in there, but Izuru is probably the only, like, lieutenant, like the highest ranking officer that actually died out of that 1,000. Everybody else is probably, the vast majority of that is going to be foot soldiers or seated officers that are probably like, we saw the seated officers in Squad 3, the 3rd, the 4th, and the 6th seats, or whatever, no, the 3rd, 5th, and 6th seats that got annihilated by Basby. So they were seated officers, but probably other seated officers like, oh no, they killed the 17th seat of Squad 6. No! Like it might be something like that. But still, 1/3 of your total fighting force is annihilated. That's not good. That's not good at all. So then we cut back over to Hajomaru. Wait, damn it, I did it again. What is this guy's name? Hold on. Hidetomo Kajomaru. Kajomaru. All right, I'm calling him Kajomaru from now on. It's okay. I'm sure he is going to be very relevant into this arc. He's always going to be there. He's gonna be the one that's going to train really hard, master his Bankai, and he's going to defeat the Quincy's. Okay, Kajomaru, man. Woo! Okay. So, he didn't die. He's standing there. He looks pretty nervous, though. I mean, last episode, he seemed pretty cool. He seemed pretty chill. He's the 6th seat of Squad 13, so that's a relatively high rank. So, he was kind of reassuring Yuki and Shino, like, hey, it's gonna be all right. We'll be okay. He was sort of philosophizing about what war really meant in the history of the Quincy's. But then you realize that he was literally just there for that and that alone. So he's like, he's talking to Jugram Hashwalt, who's actually there right now, and he's like, oh, you dare mock the 13 Court Guard squads? And Hashwalt is kind of just slowly approaching him like a JoJo's villain, like, don't you see? You're just shaking in your boots. And then Kajomaru does the old reliable scream and stab. When a Bleach character just loses. Like, you can tell right there. You can see this is right there the moment where his brain just breaks. It just snaps. And he's like, ah! And he just proceeds to just scream and run at his opponent and just kind of hope that his sword stabs them. And, that has never really worked. Just has never really worked, but hey, it's worth a try. I liked his design, if nothing else. So, Hashwalt, in the manga, I remember this. I remember reviewing this chapter and just saying that, like, oh, he cuts down Kajomaru because Hashwalt is, like, one of the absolute strongest Sternritter. I actually remember somebody messaging me after that chapter and saying that, like, hey, he didn't actually just cut down Kajomaru, he actually sliced him in half, like, vertically. Because in the manga, there's only one scene that indicates this, and it's a scene where you see his glasses, and the middle part of his glasses, the bridge of his glasses, I don't know, I don't wear glasses, I don't know, but the bridge of his glasses, like, the part on his nose right there, you actually see it get cut, implying that he got, like right down the center, okay? And it is pretty brutal, and we actually do get to see it here, where, we have one scene where Hashwolf just swings his sword. He just has this really long kind of like Zweihander or whatever. It is a German sword, so I guess that makes sense. And then you see the bridge of his glasses get cut. And then in the next shot, they do add a scene that makes it more obvious. Bam. So, yeah, Kajomaru's not coming back. He got sliced in half from, head all the way down. Like, he's gone. And then it's okay, though, because his death does leave us a title card. Kill the Shadow. Ooh. So, yeah. This is, you know how I said I had to kind of be careful where I do the cue points because I don't want to get these videos age restricted like in the second episode. Last episode wasn't too hard. This one, I had to do some like, oh, I really want to show that. Can't, though, probably. So, yeah, let's dive into this here. Okay. So, we actually open up, this goes from chapter 495 to 499. There are 5 chapters in this episode. There's not as much material that's actually cut out and replaced. We don't get anything with Uryu and Ryukin continued in this episode. If anything, there's actually scenes that are expanded on a little bit, and this is actually one of them. So the episode actually starts with Rojuro Otorobashi, or just Rose, as he's most commonly named. He is the new captain of Squad 3. He used to be the old captain of Squad 3. He was a visored, and after the events of the Fake Karakura Town arc, Rose and Shinji and Kensei got their positions back as the captains of Squad 3, 5, and 9, respectively. So we see a scene with a Hell Butterfly actually arriving at the scene to give Rose a status update. Man, I could do an entire video on Hell Butterflies, especially from what happened in the recent one-shot that came out last year. But basically, they are used by the Shinigami to relay information. Now, this was actually shown in the manga. We see, like, a very brief moment of a Hell Butterfly flying flying, but we don't actually get to see this. Like, this scene is, like, actually taken directly from the manga of Rose standing there, except in the manga, he does not have the Hell Butterfly on his shoulder, so that's, like, the added scene there, where it's actually shown that the butterfly lands on Rose's shoulder and actually, like, telepathically gives him the report that Izuru has fallen in battle. And here is where we get introduced to another Sternritter. We get introduced to Sternritter letter U with some cool piano teeth, and this is na 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 Batman. Okay, I'm sorry, I had to do it. That was the running gag every single time he showed up in the manga when I did the reviews. I'm gonna be dusting off a lot of the old review skits and jokes in this one, but this is Sternritter letter U, na 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 Jacoop. Okay, and so he is Sternritter U, the underbelly, although we don't find that out for a long time. You know, I'm mentioning it now. You know why I'm mentioning it now? Because when we finally do find out what his ability is, it's like way further down the line, and he uses it once and immediately gets taken out. So it's like, might as well say what his ability is now, because maybe they might actually do something interesting with it in the anime rather than the manga. He actually fights against, or tries to fight against, Aizen in the manga, and he actually doesn't do such a bad job with it, to be honest with you. He actually manages to knock Aizen out for like 5 minutes, which for anybody, that's quite a feat right there. Anyway, he's fighting against Rose. They have a whole conversation in the manga that's expanded on a little bit, where Rose mentions, and Rose is always a very expressive kind of individual. He loves art, he loves music, he loves reading, and you could even kind of see that with his little like ruffled neck piece there. His Zanpakuto is Kinshara, which turns it into a whip, but it's also heavily music based, and his Bankai Kinshara Butodan is even more so related to music. So he likes to play the guitar, and he says, like, every time I look at Izuru, I always get flashes of inspiration. In the manga, they go into more detail where Rose mentions his flying V, like the Gibson flying V. They don't actually mention that by name. There might be a copyright thing, I don't know, because Gibson might own that term. But they just say, like, my guitar and I are already weeping. Oh my god, Rose, you're so emo! This is what happens after, Rose spends, like, a few months with Izuru. He soaks up all of Izuru's emo. He's even kind of wearing his hair a little bit like Izuru is. That might actually be intentional, because I don't think Rose had a hairstyle. His hairstyle was different before he met Izuru. And this is after, like, because go back and watch the fight between when the Visors show up at Fake Karakura Town. Rose is, like, hopping out of the rubble, and he's just like, when an enemy and an enemy fight together, that means that they're friends. Or, like, he's going on and doing, like, this poetry in the middle of the battlefield. He's very expressive. And now he's like, now granted, they are under attack by an enemy army that has annihilated 1/3 of their fighting force, and his lieutenant is they just found out his lieutenant was dead. So I can see him being a little bit more somber here than usual, but he didn't decide on that hairstyle when the Sternritter showed up, okay? So I imagine he's taken some cues from Izuru there for a while. So yeah, he has the big thing, like, my guitar is already weeping, so many of my men are dead, and so then he continues the fight. Then we cut over to over here, where we have this guy. Say hi to this guy, everybody. This is Sternritter letter F, Asnote, and this guy is going to be the thumbnail for this episode, guaranteed, okay? So they handle Asnote extraordinarily creepily in this episode, which is appropriate, consider I watched this episode yesterday when it came out. It was Halloween, so it really worked. The music when this guy is around, the camera kind of like skews a little bit to get you like off kilter and gets you a little bit like uncomfortable of like, oh man. So Asnote is Sternritter F, the Fear, and his ability is implied right here, where we have some random members of Squad 6 that are fighting him, and so they're just like, what kind of monster is this thing? And so we see Sternritter F, and they mention that, like, not only is he really powerful and he's wiping out all of, like, the Shinigami with one attack, he summons these thorns, but they mention that whenever somebody gets stabbed with these thorns, they just scream bloody murder, like, like the other members are like, why are they dying like this? You know, like it's not even just like you get stabbed and that's it. It's like you get stabbed and you like experience the worst fear of your entire life times like 1,000. Okay, it's like, oh my god, giant clowns! You know, actually, if I got stabbed with Asnote's thorns, I would probably just picture getting swarmed by a bunch of mutant wasps. Like mutant yellow jackets or something. That would probably be my greatest fear. But anyway, yeah, it's pretty terrifying, man. It's a pretty scary ability. But hey, you gotta hand it to this guy right here. This dude might very well be the MVP of the entire episode, okay? So, while all the other Shinigami are like, screw this, we're getting out of here, we're retreating, we cannot beat this guy, we're out of here, they all leave. This one dude, this one guy, he's not a seated officer or anything, he's just a foot soldier, he looks like he is fresh out of the academy. He's like, but wait, comrades, the mission of the 13 Court Guard squads isn't to protect our own lives, it's to protect the Seirete, right? Guys, come back and lay your life on the line and fight this creepy, you know, Sadako ring-looking dude. You know? Like, come on, man. Didn't you read the Shinigami handbook? There actually is a Shinigami handbook, and it actually... Hold on a second. This is the Bleach light novel, one of them. This is Can't Fear Your Own World. This is volume 1. This actually starts off with an excerpt from the Shinigami handbook that this guy is actually quoting. I'm going to read it to you here because it really does do a wonderful job of showing exactly what the mindset of the Shinigami are. Don't seek aesthetics in battle. Don't seek virtue in death. Don't believe your life only belongs to yourself. If you really want to protect something, attack the enemy from behind. So it's basically kind of like, in one sense, it's telling you, do whatever you have to do to protect the Seirete and the Shinigami, but also tells you, like, when you join up with the Gotei, you're not just one soldier. Your own personal, like, you know, your insecurities or whatever, they don't matter, okay? You are a soldier in the Gotei. So that's why I feel this guy is, like, just fresh out of the academy. Like, he just graduated, like, last week. Like, before all this Quincy crap happened and Chojuro died and everything, like, he just graduated. He was excited. He's like, oh, man, I get to join Squad 6. Byakuya and Renji, they're such a cool captain-lieutenant combo. This is gonna be great. And then, like, the next week, that's when the Quincy's attack. And he's like, oh, crap, it's all right, though, because we're here to protect the Seirete, and now he's in his first major battle, and, like, everybody is just, like, abandoning ship. Except not everybody, because, boom! Oh, actually, yeah, we must not retreat. He's about to attack Asnote. He's just like, we will not retreat! You know, he goes to attack Asnote, and then, boom, we have Renji showing up with Zabimaru and Ichikai, and he's like, yeah, all right, well said, random fodder Shinigami. You know, so Renji's arriving on the scene. He's going to help out this guy. I hope that guy survived. I really do. You know what's funny? He actually was in the manga. There was a lot of shots in this episode I actually forgot about. I thought that wasn't even in the manga. But no, he's in there. He shows up. He's there. So now we cut around to the Seirete where we see the various opponents that each of them are going to have to fight. So we see Sternritter E right here. This is Bambietta Basturbine. And she is E, the Explode. I'm just going to give out their Sternritter abilities at this point because they kind of do use them in this episode. Some of them do anyway. We have Sternritter E, the Explode, Bambietta Basturbine. She just blows stuff up. And she is going to be fighting against 7th Division Captain Sajin Komamura. And they have a little bit of a back and forth. It was like, even a young girl like you is fighting for the rebel army. And then Bambietta's just like, they've made a doggy like you a captain? I remember that scene. I remember that line from the anime. Like, they made a doggy a captain? I mean, a line from the manga. That was a fun one. So, Bambi's there, and then we cut over. We see Shuhei facing down against Driscoll Birchie. He is Sternritter O, the Overkill. And they don't all get their little title card intros. Only, like, the most prominent ones do. So, Driscoll, though, is actually the Sternritter that killed Chojuro. He's the Overkill, and we saw that Chojuro got pretty overkilled. So, yeah, he's the one that summoned that giant partisan thing that impaled Chojuro into the side of the 1st Division wall. So, yeah, that's him. Then we cut over. We see Shunsui Kyoraku, the captain of Squad 8, facing on against Sternritter letter N, Robert Akutron, who looks like a weatherman for Channel 6. We actually do not know what his letter stands for. It's one of the 2 letters we never find out, and I was actually kind of expecting in this episode to actually see what it was, but no, so maybe later we'll find it out. Then we have Soy Phone, Captain of Squad 2, and the head of the Stealth Corps, and she's going up against Sternritter letter K, BG9, who is like a robot, Quincy, and we also do not know his letter, what it stands for. I always assume for BG9, though, it's pretty obvious that his letter, his script stood for K, the knowledge, because he's like a robot and he knows a lot of knowledge. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was the knowledge, but I have no idea what Robert Aquatron's letter N stands for, so I guess we'll find out later, hopefully. Okay, this is, like, all right, so I actually did not know who this was for a moment there, because this person, it's not Askin, because we saw Askin in the last episode showing up, but Askin's wearing a hood, and his hair is not that, it looks very long and kind of, like, scruffy, like, his hair is not that. Askin uses some really fine hair gel, okay, so I actually think, because it was mentioned that there's, like, 16 Sternritters in the manga that actually invaded. We don't get to see all 16 of them in this episode, okay? So that means that there were some other ones in there, and I think he is one of them. I think this is Sternritter W, Nyanzel Weisel. I think that's Sternritter W, the Wind, who only shows up once again in one chapter way later on down the line. Like, literally, like, we're on episode, like, I mean, we're on chapter 495 now. I don't think Nyanzel shows up until, like, chapter, like 598 or something. Like, it's like 100 chapters from now, he finally pops up for a single chapter and then is killed. So this is, I think, Sternritter W, because that's the only one that really has hair like that. But he's facing off against Jushiro Ukitake, who already has his Zanpakuto out, Sogyo no Kotowari, ready to go. We cut over to Toshiro, who's fighting against Sternritter I, Kang-Do, the Iron. Then we cut over and we see the fight between Renji and Asno continuing. So this is the moment where they're starting to figure out their abilities. We see that Asno is utilizing Blut Veen or Blut Vina. I'm not great at German. But and also, by the way, to bring that up really quick, because somebody brought up like the Volt Stern Dick thing, the way that it was spelled. So I don't think that was the same way it was written in the manga, in the Viz manga. I don't think they were trying to spell it that way. I think they were basically trying to break it down phonetically, because there's a lot of German in this arc, you know what I mean? So I don't think, because like it was like it's not actually spelled Vol Stern Dick, like 3 separate words, okay? Because people that are actually proficient in German mention that it actually, honestly, that direct translation in German does still kind of fit, but just Voltständig is one thing is more appropriate for the Quincy's. But I think they were doing it more phonetically. Kind of like if I was going to say a really long word like, okay, how about like Pachycephalosaurus? Okay, so Pachycephalosaurus is a dinosaur, all right? Now, that's one word. It's one very long word. But let's say, like, in order to make it easier to understand, what if I said Pachycephalosaurus? So I spelled it with spaces in it. That's not how you actually spell the word, but phonetically it might make a little bit more sense on how you actually pronounce it. So I think that's what they might have been going for here, more of pronunciation over actual direct spelling, but it is still just Voltständig as like their main, that's how you actually say it. Anyway, so here's Asnote, and there's the Blut Vina. You can see they basically add reishi. They basically add a crap load of reishi to their blood vessels and their arteries and stuff, and that makes them in their veins, and that makes them more tough. Then we have a new guy showing up. We have Sternritter S, Master Masculine, arrives on the scene, and he does a punch from above to try to attack Renji. Renji dodges. He then heads above, and then boom, at that point we have some flower petals, some cherry blossom petals arriving, and then, the headliners here, ladies and gentlemen. We have Captain of the 6th Division, Byaku Yakuchiki, head of the Kuchiki clan, Rukia's older brother, a big fan of bonsai trees, I guess. Anyway, he shows up on the scene, and he's got Senbon Zakura, one of the strongest Zanpakuto out there, and he's basically just like, hey, Renji, I don't want you to hold back. I don't want you to play around with them. These guys are trying to annihilate the Soul Society without mercy. Cut them down with everything you got. Oh, he's so cold and heartless, but he's so just, his impeccable, perfect skin. Oh my goodness. You know? Anyway, yeah, Byaku is pretty cool. His hair's pretty awesome too. All right. So, we actually do get an added anime scene here, and I actually don't know how to feel about this, because this scene was really cool, and then I noticed something that made it even more cool, and then I realized what that meant, and I thought it was they kind of had a problem here continuity wise, and then I remembered some other things that maybe it isn't. So allow me to break this down. So this is Mayuri in his private lab, and he is doing an analysis on his computer, because the Soul Society has computers, at least the R&D division do. They have cell phones. They have like 2003 era smartphones. So yeah, of course they have computers. So anyway, we have a scene here where Mayuri is running a test on something, and the results are coming back negative. Okay, so what Mayuri is actually doing right now is they assumed that when Chodro was defeated by Driscoll, he mentioned that, they can something Bankai. They assumed that Chodro meant that the Quincy's can seal the Bankai. Like, they could basically lock it up inside of the Zanpakuto so they cannot use them anymore, okay? So they can block their use of Bankai. So what Mayuri is doing here, and you can even see it on the screen up there, he's actually analyzing Gonrimaru, which is Chodro Sasakibe's Zanpakuto. So Sasakibe died, his body was cremated, but they took his Zanpakuto, Gonrimaru, the stern spirit, and Mayuri is analyzing it to figure out how his Bankai was sealed and how they can, like, break the seal so they can fight. So I was really, I didn't even notice Gonrimaru, by the way, on the first time watching this. I just thought he was running a test, and then I noticed it on the screen, and, like, that's what's in the tube right there. Okay, so that's Gonrimaru right there. It's like a rapier. So I was like, oh, that's so cool. They used Gonrimaru, but then I'm like, wait a second. Chodro died. Isn't it, like, stated that whenever a Shinigami, like, they are born with their Soul Reaper and they die with their Soul Reaper? That was a line that was from the Zanpakuto filler arc. So, do Zanpakuto disappear when a Shinigami dies? And there's even a scene later on in this arc when Byakuya is kind of close to death. Spoiler alert. And we actually see Senbon Zakura beginning to crumble apart. So, Chodro's body is cremated, man. It's gone. It's done. He's dead. So, how is Gonrimaru still around? However, then I started to remember a scene. Hold on, I have it over here. Let me go grab it really quick. This sword right here is Suzumushi. Many people will probably know this was the Zanpakuto of the former 9th Division Captain Kaname Tozen, who defected and went to Aizen's side of things, okay? So here's the thing, though. Suzumushi was not Tozen's Zanpakuto. His friend had the Zanpakuto. His friend was a Shinigami that had Suzumushi. Then she ended up dying, which is also, by the way, explained more in not Thousand Year Blood War, Can't Fear Your Own World light novel. And when she died, Tozen took her sword from her coffin and decided to become a Soul Reaper himself. And it looked the same. It had the exact same guard, the exact same ring. And I bring that up because this ring is very relevant for using the Bankai of Suzumushi. In order to use Bankai for Suzumushi, Tozen literally has to, like, hold the ring like this, and it expands into Suzumushi, Suishiki, Enma Kurogi. And so it looks exactly like this when he picked it up out of the coffin. So it's implied that his friend Zanpakuto was Suzumushi, and then Tozen had it, and then it's also still Suzumushi, which is very weird. Now, I haven't read all of Can't Fear Your Own World, so maybe it's going in a little bit more detail there. But there's at least a few examples of Zanpakuto that disappear when the Shinigami die, like Byakuya, or when they're about to die. They start to crumble apart. And then there's other examples where they don't. So Kubo's actually a little bit inconsistent with that. And then there's the whole line in the Zanpakuto filler arc, like, they are born with their Shinigami and they die with their Shinigami. But that might not be true either, because we find out they're not actually, well, okay. We're going to find out a lot more about Shinigami and Zanpakuto and their relationship, and we actually even find out, like, what Zanpakuto really are. So that statement, they're born and they die with their Shinigami, that's not inaccurate, because we later find out, I'm just going to say it because it is kind of confusing. This scene right here does add to it. It makes it a little bit more confusing. So a Zanpakuto's spirit, that's not a separate spirit. That's actually your spirit. It is a fragment of your spirit. When Ichigo learns how to master his Zanpakuto and he gets his two-bladed Zangetsus, it's not the blade and me or the blade with me. No, it is I am the blade. The blade is me. So it's like when you get an Asauchi, when you get a blank Zanpakuto, you feed your Reiatsu into it, and it kind of creates sort of an alternate version of you. Not really. It kind of just... look at all the different Shinigami and look at their Zanpakutos. Their personalities sometimes do mesh really well. Like, they're kind of like their own personalities. Other times, they're opposites. But you could also look at that as a thing, like, their subconscious being is brought into existence through a Zanpakuto. So in a sense, they are a separate soul, but it's still a soul that came about from your own soul. So if you're dead, it makes sense that the Zanpakuto would disappear, but that clearly wasn't the case with Tozen and his friend. So, you take it whatever you will, but Mayuri is analyzing Gonorimaru. That's what's happening, okay? So he's analyzing it to see how to break this seal, but it's actually coming up negative, so Mayuri is just like, I don't really know what to do about this. And he realizes, so they're not sealing Bankais away. And that's going to be the big twist in this episode. So we cut back over. We see Byakuya slamming Senbon Sakura into Asnote. Renji basically says, Captain, Taicho, we cannot harm them. Our blades cannot cut them. And Byakuya's just like, our blades won't penetrate. Oh, the hell they won't. Shing! And he cuts apart Asnote's fingers, and he doesn't, like, slice them off or anything, but he gives Asnote a paper cut, which is probably wasn't what Byakuya was trying to do. He was probably trying to cut off his actual hand, but it does show that if you are strong enough, you have enough finesse, you can actually cut through and break through the Blut Vein. So, at that point, he also uses Senbon Sakura to break the floor so that Maste Masculine, Sternritter S, the superstar, he falls into that. Asno creates some more thorns to throw at them. I should mention at this point, and it's the same in the manga. I went back and looked at the manga for this. Asno does not speak in this episode. He also doesn't speak in the manga, which is fine. So, it actually adds way more creepy dimensions to this scene. Like, Asnote is the fear. He is literally the embodiment of fear. He can literally stab you with these things and make you experience the worst fear of your entire life and augment it to some crazy degree. And, to the point where you just die screaming bloody murder. And I love the fact he does not say a damn word in this chapter. He's not like, I am Sternritter F, I am the fear, you will fear me, wah-ha-ha-ha-ha. Like, they could have gone really cheesy with it, but no, he is here to fight, and he is here to creep people out, all right? He makes these weird, like, facial expressions with his eyes and his mouth, like, but he doesn't talk in this episode. He talks later, but he doesn't talk here, and I think that's a beautiful introduction to his character. It really fits. So, Byakuya uses Senbon Sakura. He tries to just cover him in just a storm of the razor flower petals, but that also doesn't work. See, right there, that kind of crap where he's just like, oh. He's like, oh, you're trying to hurt me. That's so cute. And then it just, bam, and he just, like, disperses the flower petals around him. He doesn't get hurt, and we even see him he's like, oh. Like, look at the expression on his face. It's just like he's trying to freak you out. He's got the spiked bracelets and whatever. Oh, man. And then at that point, though, we see actually a pretty cool combo attack. We see Renji. Let me see for a moment, actually. I want to see if this is actually in the manga. I don't think it is. We have a scene with... Let's see. No, yeah, this isn't in the manga. So they add a little extra scene here. This isn't in the manga, where Renji traps him with Zabimaru. And then Byakuya jumps ahead and then uses a Senbon Sakura to just boom right in the face. Like, keep in mind, every blade of Senbon Sakura is a razor blade. So he's literally just like a freaking rushing rapid of a river. Just boom! Just right headshot right into the center of Asno, just trying to rip his damn head off into pieces. That does not work either. We even see one of the flower petals get like it can't even penetrate his eye. So even an eyeball, like even one of the weaker parts, like the soft squishy part on a human body, can be made very impenetrable via the Blut Vena. So the flower petal is blocked there, and then we just have a shot where he creates a bunch more thorns to attack. Next, we cut over to Bambietta fighting Komamura, and she utilizes her ability, which is the Explode. This is something else I kind of have a problem with. So when we cut over to Komamura's fight here, it is actually not shown how she attacks Komamura. So it's shown here in the anime, except there's a little bit of a problem with it. So Bambietta's ability is the explode, which you might think it's just the ability to make things blow up, which it is, but it's more complicated than that. Her ability is she makes those Ryatsu orbs right there. She fires them at an object. Whatever object they touch does not explode, like the orb itself is an explosive. Whatever object it comes in contact with turns into a bomb. It turns into an explosive, and then it blows up, okay? So, for example, if she throws this orb at a boulder, it hits the boulder. The boulder does not actually explode like the thing explodes on contact with the boulder. The orb comes in contact with the boulder, it fuses with it, and then the entire boulder explodes as if the entire boulder was made out of TNT or whatever. So there is a difference. By the way, those thighs, man, I've been seeing a lot of people freak out over Bambietta's thighs, but it's the first time I've really noticed it. Damn. Anyway, she kicks this soccer ball, and Komamura cuts it. He cuts it. He's shing! So, that's a little bit of a problem because, in all honesty, those things should not be able to be cut. Like Tengen should have become a bomb in that instance. And that wasn't in the manga, like I said. That was added in. So anyway, it proceeds to... So in this instance, it acts like a regular bomb, which she can also make the air a bomb, too. So it does make sense. It's just a little weird that Komamura... It's a cool scene that Komamura could cut it, but not exactly accurate to her power. We also see Iba Tetsuzaimon. He's there, too. He's the lieutenant of Squad 7. He has some cool shades. He also has a really nice Yakuza tattoo. I think it's like a cat that's tattooed on his back, but we rarely ever get to see that. All right, so we also I capped this scene just because we have a good shot of Bambietta's sword. It's like this neat like forked blade that also has a really cool guard to it. So the Quincy's are all German, obviously. So I'm thinking that their swords are going to be more resembling German weapons rather than Japanese katanas. We even saw that with Jugram Hashwolf's like Zweihander, like his like long sword. And Bambi's like guard, it looks very different from like a katana, you know. So I think that's what Oda's also playing with here. But it's also important to mention that not all Quincy's use swords or bows and arrows, as we're going to see in a moment here. So cutting over to the next shot, we have Toshiro's fight against Kang-Do. We see Toshiro's ice, which has definitely been given an upgrade since the first anime, where Toshiro's ice was just like blue. You know, now it actually looks like real ice, and it has like a texture to it, so that looks pretty neat. He's fighting against Sternritter I, the Iron Kang-Do, who uses like these Wolverine claws in order to fight. He tries to cut him, same deal, can't cut him. He freezes his arm, but Kang-Do just kind of slams right into him without it. And he's like, how is he so tough? Boom! Toshiro gets knocked through a wall, and we then cut over to Soifone, who this is also added in the anime. She attempts to use Suzume Bachi against her opponent, BG9. Now, Suzume Bachi has the ability to hit certain death, Nigeki Kotetsu, or Kotetsu, I can't remember which one. But it's basically you stab somebody twice in the same spot with Suzume Bachi, and they will die from a lethal poison. So that actually doesn't work for a few reasons. Number one, she can't even puncture BG9 because of the blute, but also he's a robot, so I don't even know if that would work against him, because it was mentioned it was poison that is the thing that actually takes you out. So, yeah, that doesn't really work for BG9 there. But she does use it here, and it's just kind of explaining, like, okay, they're all trying their Shikais out first before they can actually go to Bankai, because like their Bankais apparently can be sealed. They think it can be sealed. So they're just being a little bit more cautious about it. BG9 has like these metal tentacles that come out, and he tries to attack Soifone with that, but she dodges. She gets cut a little bit, but just on her cheek, not a big deal. Soifone's like the fastest character in all of the Gotei 13, so she should be fine. Then we have the creation of a bunch of the thorns from Asnote, and then at that point, that's when Byakuya decides, I gotta use my Bankai. And then, you know, Renji's like, you know, they have a means of sealing away a Bankai. All right. So this is a logic. It's in the manga too. I'm not a fan of this logic because it just goes to show the Shinigami did not really plan at all for this battle. They knew about this situation. They knew about this for a couple of days before the Sternritter's attack. They could have come up with a better plan than this. So Byakuya's plan is, I'm going to... Okay, he mentions that these are not an enemy we can defeat without bloodshed, and also it's not an enemy we can defeat without Bankai. Okay, first point, I'm gonna argue that right away. You guys really did not try anything else. You tried using your Shikais like once against your respective opponents. It didn't work. So now you're like, well, we have to use Bankai to beat them. Now, granted, these are seasoned veterans. These are seasoned captains that have fought countless battles. So they might be able to tell, they might be able to size up the enemy pretty well and how we're going to be able to fight them and when we're out of our league and when Shikai can work and when Shikai can't work. I'm just saying that, like, Toshiro tries one attack, Byakuya tries two attacks. I didn't even see Komamura use his Shikai. Who was the Soifone tried Nageki Kitetsu, and that didn't work. So it's like, okay, I can kind of see that, but it's like you got other stuff in your toolbox, and you know that they can do something with your Bankai. They know that they're waiting for you to go and do your Bankai. So I'm like, Keto maybe? Keto, try Keto out first. You got Keto. And then now people have mentioned, like, well, because they're Quincy's, they can maybe absorb Keto, because the whole point of Keto is, like, turning Reishi or Ryatsu into spells. But, like, you know, it's worth a shot, right? Like, and there wasn't even a thing that was mentioned, like, don't use Keto. They can absorb it. They're Quincy's. I would have liked that to at least been mentioned, like, the reason why they don't use Keto. They got other, like, there's 4 main combat methods of the Shinigami. Zanjutsu, using a sword, using a Zanpakuto, is only one of them. You got Keto, you got Hakuda, which is hand-to-hand combat, which I am so surprised that Soifone doesn't try to use hand-to-hand combat before she just immediately jumps to Bankai. Komamura as well, big tough guy. And then there's Ho, which is like high-speed movement, so they don't really attempt to use any of the other 3 combat methods. They're just like, Shikai, that doesn't work. Okay, Bankai, it's the only thing we got in our repertoire. It's the only thing left we can use. Can't get clever. It's not even like we can try using Shikai again, but maybe be a little bit more clever this time? Like, no, it's just jump immediately to Bankai. So that, I'm gonna raise umbrage with that immediately, Byakuya. Also, there's another piece of logic here that I also have a problem with, and it's this right here, where Byakuya says the key to winning this battle is going to be figuring out how to break the seal. So, Renji, I'm going to use my Bankai right now, and if he ends up sealing it, it's up to you to defeat Asnote using your Bankai. And, like, you guys know nothing about what they're doing to your Bankais right now. You're assuming that they're sealing it, but you don't know for certain. But even if they were sealing it, let's go ahead with that logic and say they are sealing your Bankais. Why do you think automatically they can only seal one? You're basically like, all right, Renji, I'm going to use my Bankai. If they seal it, then you finish them off with your Bankai. They'll never see it coming. It's just like, what if they can seal more than one Bankai? What if Renji's Bankai gets sealed too? Then you're both screwed. What if they could seal infinite amount of Bankais? What if they actually aren't sealing your Bankais? What if it's something else? So the logic here is kind of broken. Now, Shunsui is going to bring up something later on in the episode that I'm going to follow up this conversation with then, but let's just move on for right now. So Byakuya, Soifone, Komamura, and Toshiro all go into their Bankais. I'll just read them off from left to right. So we have Byakuya using Senbon Sakura Kagayoshi. We have Komamura using Kokujo Tengen Myo. We have Toshiro using Daigen Hyorimaru. And we have Soifone using Chakahorai Koben. And they use them all at once. And then it's really cool. It's really cool to see Senbon Sakura Kagayoshi. Actually, I think in the manga, the second we get like one panel of Senbon Sakura Kagayoshi before it's taken. But in the anime, it's added a little bit, so we get to see Senbon Sakura in all of its glorious, updated anime CG style. That's really cool. That's a really cool shot right there of Byakuya, the hair flowing in the wind, all of the countless hundreds of millions of cherry blossoms. We see Kokujo Tengen Myo. We see Jakuhorai Koben, the giant F-off missile launcher. And we see Daigen Hyorimaru. Really cool. And then immediately after they do that, all of the Quincy's are like, ah. And so Asnote pulls out his medallion, as well as all the other Quincy's, and then bam! They get, it's actually a really dark scene where we see not just the Bankai being destroyed, but slowly crumbling apart and being absorbed into the medallion that they have. And we see Soifone's entire cannon being absorbed, And this is where Byakuya has his moment of like, oh boy, we messed up. This is not a seal. This is a really cool shot. We actually see one of the flower petals of Senbon Zakura Kageyoshi getting absorbed into the medallion. And then we just have a shot of Hasnot. See, that's what I mean. Like, the fact he doesn't talk and he just makes these kind of facial expressions like, So they realize they messed up. Byakuya has his, like, they stole my Bankai! Then we have the in-between bumpers for the episodes, the eye catches. We have the Gotei 13. And then over here we have the Stern Ritter. So these are the Stern Ritter that showed up during the invasion, except for Killhei down there, because he's obviously in Huecamundo. But we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Hold on, let me count that again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, so there's 12 Stern Ritters right here. Let's see. We have Robert Akutron on the left, and then Basby, and then Maste Masculine on the top right, and then Askanak Levar under him, Jugram Hashwalt in the center, Asnote to the left of him, to the right of him is Driscoll, then there's Najakup, and then below him is BG9, and then the one with the cloak and the scar on the lip, that's Kangdu, then Bambietta, and then Killhei off to the right. So yeah, that's the only ones that we've met so far. So they haven't shown anybody that we haven't met yet. So yeah, but the one that attacked Uketake, I'm thinking is Nyanzel. That's the only one it could really be. Well, I guess not the only one it could be. Okay, we later find out there's a Stern Ritter that has an ability to summon other Stern Ritters, to create other Stern Ritters. So I guess that could be the case too, but we'll see where it goes. All right, so we cut back here, and Kawamura so aptly puts it, she stole my Bankai! She took my Bankai! Rubber! So they steal the Bankai. They don't seal it away in the sword. They literally steal it so they can use it on their own. We have a moment where Toshiro's staring down at his Zanpakuto, like, say something! Say something, Yorin Maru! Okay, so before we continue, let me just bring this up here. This is something I'm still confused by this to this day. If anybody wants to break this down, like, you know, in bullet points in the comment section and explain it as concisely as possible, I would be very welcome to that, okay? All right, okay, how to explain this? Okay. The Quincy steal the Bankai. So the Bankai is no longer in the sword. However, later on, we find out they can still use their Shikais. Their Shikais are still able to be used perfectly fine. The thing that I don't understand is that the source of the ability is the Zanpakuto spirit, which, as I said, is the Shinigami spirit that kind of splits off and attaches it to the sword, okay, and has like a slightly different personality. But it doesn't make any sense to steal the Bankai. Rather, it should have been steal the Zanpakuto spirit. Because if you actually physically ripped the spirit out of the sword, then I can understand why they wouldn't be able to use any of their abilities. And in that case, they shouldn't be able to use their Shikai, nor should they be able to use their Bankai. You're literally ripping the spirit out of the sword. However, right here, you have Toshiro trying to communicate with Yorin-Maru, say something, Yorin-Maru, and Yorin-Maru does not respond. So did the Quincy's, did they steal the spirit, or did they steal just the Bankai? Because it either way doesn't make any sense, because if they steal the spirit, they shouldn't be able to use their Zanpakuto powers at all. They shouldn't be able to use Shikai. They shouldn't be able to use Bankai. And if they stole just the Bankai, but they can still use the Shikai, then that means the spirit should still be in the sword to answer. Because where is the ice powers coming from? I guess you could argue, okay, I guess you could argue because the Zanpakuto spirit is the Shinigami's own soul, maybe you could say the Shinigami's own soul is what creates the Shikai. Like their own power generates the Shikai. But using Bankai is when they actually have to work together with their Zanpakuto spirit in order to use the full power. But that still doesn't make any sense, because when we learned about how Shikai works, you have to open up a dialogue with the Zanpakuto spirit. That's the whole point. Like, you go into the Zanpakuto's inner world, and then you communicate with the Zanpakuto spirit, and then you unlock Shikai. And the way Bankai works, the way you unlock Bankai, is you have to manifest the Zanpakuto spirit in the physical world. Now, Ichigo cheated with this, and they used the Tenshin Tai. They used that device that Urahara created to forcibly create Zangetsu in the manifestation form, okay? So Ichigo kind of cheated.
but that's the proper way to do it. Like Renji was able to summon Zabimaru into the physical world, okay? So that's the way. So either way, unlocking Shikai and Bankai, it involves communicating and having a dialogue with the Zanpakuto spirit in some way. So if the Zanpakuto spirit is ripped away, which clearly it seems to be the case because it's not answering Toshiro, then you know what I mean? Like, it's a little weird. It's just a little bit strange, okay? Anyway, I'm trying to think of another example of this, but I can't really come up with one because the power system in Bleach and the way that Zanpakuto spirits work with the Shinigami's spirit is a little bit... It's a little bit unique in terms of anime. Yeah, I don't know really how to explain it all that well with another metaphor, so I'll just leave it at that. Anyway, Zanpakuto stolen. Bad times had by all. All right. Or Bankai stolen. So Toshiro asks Rangiku to use Tente Kura. Tente Kura is, I believe, Bakudo number 77. It's the heavenly chained Skynet. It's basically the version of, like, it's their communications, one of their mass communications abilities. So she uses Tente Kura to communicate with all of the Shinigami at once in the court and says that, yes, they can actually steal the Bankai. They don't seal it. Please do not. If you haven't used your Bankai yet, please do not. It is very dangerous. They can take it from you. We have Kensei there freaking out. We have Rose freaking out. Like, they could steal him, what? Shinji's there. He's rushing to a battle. Mayuri is really peeved off because he's like, why couldn't they wait until my analysis was completed? We have Yamamoto here just looking very, very somber. Yamamoto is just kind of like, he's still grieving for Chodoro, but he kind of just like, he's sort of not really in it right now. You know, he's the commander. He should be the one, like, at the helm. He should be barking orders and be like, you know, this squad over here, mobilize over here. He is just standing on the balcony awash in grief and sadness. He is not a very effective leader right now. Now, he's going to get into the battle next episode, and this is probably the setup for that. But right now, he's kind of dropping the ball in terms of a commanding officer. But hey, you can understand it. He's been through a lot the last few days. So, this is Shunsui speaking right here. So, Shunsui mentions that with enough information, Captain Kurotsuchi can usually solve a problem, you know, in a day. Problem is, he doesn't have enough information right now, so they just had no idea what the Quincy's ability really was. So, Shunsui kind of says that, like, well, you know, once again, he repeats this. He says, but you're not a foe we can defeat without a Bankai. Well, I would argue, tell that to the Zero Squad. I would say tell that to the Zero Squad because, Senjo Maru actually defeats a member of the Stern Ritter without even using her Shikai. But whatever. Yeah, I get it. I don't really, but whatever. So he reiterates that line, but then he also says that it's a good thing that our Bankais got stolen because that means sooner or later someone had to become a sacrifice. Okay. Yeah, I'll go back to this for a moment. All right, so this is what I mean by the Shinigami did not plan this well. So they know that the Quincy's, they don't have a lot of information. That is true. They don't know a lot about how the Quincy's fight. However, they do know from Chodoro Sasakibe's last words, they do know that they have something with the Bankai, either stealing the Bankai or sealing the Bankai or whatever. I would have argued, you seem to immediately jump to their sealing it, which is a little strange in and of itself. You just immediately jump to that being the conclusion. Especially Kurotsuchi. You'd think Mayuri would have at least came up with the idea, like, they might be sealing our Bankais, they might be stealing our Bankais, they might be destroying our Bankais, they might be stealing our Zanpakuto spirits. You'd think that Mayuri would at least come up with a few different options with this without, because they don't know for certain. So it's weird that they just immediately jump to, they're sealing it. We don't know if they're sealing it, but they're probably sealing it, right? So to the point where when they said, "Oh, they stole it," they're like, "Oh my God, they stole it!" Like they didn't even consider that as a possibility, which is weird. Okay, all right. But also, Shunsui brings up right here, sooner or later, someone had to become a sacrifice, which is not untrue. Someone okay, someone else has to be the guinea pig, so they use their Bankai, and then it gets stolen or sealed, and then we'll at least know. Here's the problem. Was there any reason why you should have designated this beforehand? At that captain meeting, you should have picked one person as a volunteer to use Bankai, because now you had 4 people that used it all at once, and they got all 4 stolen. You should have picked one person one person that volunteered. It could have been Byakuya, it could have been Soifone. Actually, Soifone would have worked perfectly because Soifone doesn't even like her Bankai. Soifone has said that's not how she even fights. She fights using Hakuda, she fights using Ho-Ho, she fights using Kido or her Shikai. She doesn't like to use her giant missile launcher because it's a giant missile launcher. It's not really good for stealth operations, right? So here's how you should have done this. They should have had the captain meeting. It should have been like, Mayuri walks in and he's like, I don't know what they're doing. They're stealing it or sealing it or doing something with the Bankai. It's not good. And then Soifone should have said, I volunteer. I will use my Bankai. No one else use Bankai. No one else use it. I will use Bankai. I will have a member of the Stealth Corps standing behind me. I will have somebody in the Kido Corps. I will have somebody that can use a Hell Butterfly or Tentei Kura that will relay the information over the Seirete about how it works. They just did this. They just did it with Rangiku. Rangiku immediately used the Tentei Kura to tell all of the Shinigami what the Bankais did, okay? Now, so it's immediate. So you should have planned for this. Soifone goes into her Bankai, BG9 steals it, she immediately knows that her Bankai got stolen, and then, okay, they're not sealing it, they're stealing it, which is still bad because now BG9 has access to a giant missile launcher, but at least all the other Shinigami won't use their Bankai at this point, so it's better than one person loses it than 4 people lose it. You know what I mean? So it's like, the planning stages of this wasn't that great. You guys were seemingly pretty just somber over the death of a comrade, which I understand. Shojiro died, very sad, but you could have planned this a little bit better. I'm just saying, okay? Or you knew, like, you know, you didn't have a lot of time to prepare. You only had like a couple days, but like, I don't know. You could have used those couple of days to think about ways to fight without using Bankai. You could have thought of some new tricks using your Shikai. You could have thought of some Kido abilities, maybe hit and run tactics. I don't know. So that's my 2 cents on it. Anyway, Robert Akutron doesn't talk really either. He just kind of approaches Shunsui and then he pulls out a gun. Yeah, so Quincy's don't all use bows and arrows and knives and swords. Some of them are just packing, you know, they got the handguns. So Robert activates at this moment his own Volt Standig, which is Grimmon, it's Walk of God, and then he turns into his Volt Standing, which, like I said, is very different from Killhaze. Killhaze creates this giant pillar, and it changes him around. He's got really ornate wings and boots. And look at Robert Akutron's. Robert Akutron's is, you can't really see the halo because my camera's covering it, so let me move that over there. He gets a halo, and he gets a pair of wings, and that's it. So that's another weird thing that happens throughout this arc, is that the Quincy's Volt Standig, there's like a simplified version, and there's a more complex version. And I don't know if there's a difference between the two and why there's a difference. But anyway, Robert Akutron shoots Shunsui in the face, and I'm not going to show that scene because violence. He gets his eyeball blasted out, though, so he's bleeding pretty bad. He loses his right eye. And from this point onward, he's actually, you know, wearing a eye patch. And he actually says, you know, well, what do you know? I tried to be all chill with it, and look what happened. I got my eyeball blasted out. That's sad. So yeah, Robert Akutron just starts blasting. And then we have Renji here, who's like, Captain, your Bankai was stolen? And he hears, I assume he hears the Tentei Kura as well. Everybody else's Bankai is stolen. He's like, how am I going to do this? Bankai! And then Byakuya has to be the one to say, no! What are you doing? Don't use it. Now, that's the thing, though. Like, could have Asnote stolen it because he's already stolen one Bankai? I think they can only steal one per medallion, one per Sternritter. I think that is true. So, better not risk it, though, is the idea. So, the idea that Renji would even try to use Bankai, I mean, I guess Byakuya did tell him to do it, but still, this is a different game plan now, okay? So, Renji at this point, this is a really cool full-page spread in the manga where Renji just has a moment where it's like, you know, he's like, how are we supposed to fight these guys? And it's like, well, you got a Shikai, you got Kido, you got high-speed movement, you got hand-to-hand combat. Why don't you try punching him, I guess? You could try to figure out a weakness in the blute. I'm sure it's not completely... I mean, you could figure something out, Renji. You're smart. You're good with stuff. Okay, so now we cut back over to the Research and Development Division. This is a fun scene. I love this. I love Akon. Akon is great. So Akon is the 3rd division, the 3rd seed of the 12th division, okay? And he's like looking at this and all the people dying, and he's like, okay, we need to get the main character in here. We need to get the main character to come save us. Put me through to Ichigo. This other dude back there's like, we need the captain's orders, and Akon's like, no, we don't. Put him through. Because the thing is, Mayuri hates Urahara, and he hates relying on, like, other people. Mayuri Mayuri kind of wants to do everything himself. So it's like if Mayuri finds out that Akon talked to Uehara and Ichigo to ask for a rescue operation, Akon would probably get tortured by Mayuri. Like, Mayuri is that petty with this kind of stuff, okay? So he really is. So Akon's like, I don't even care. I don't care if he tortures me. I gotta use... we're dying out there, you know what I mean? Like we lost so many. So just put me through to Ichigo. So we cut over to Hueco Mundo, where he actually, in the manga, it's a little bit more explained, where they're actually tracking Ichigo with the combat pass, which was explained during the Fullbring arc of what the combat pass actually does. And so there's like, oh, the combat pass is at Urahara's shop, underground. And then that gets Akon to think about, and then they find out, like, he went to Hueco Mundo, and he's like, oh, okay, so I can't talk directly to Ichigo, patch me through to Uehara instead. So, you know, Akon starts to talk to Uehara. Uehara's like, oh, you know, Mushi Mushi, you know, it's been a while, hasn't it, Akon-san? How are you doing? And so, how's everything going over there? And Akon's like, we are literally in the middle of a war. Over 2,000 of our soldiers have died. Put Ichigo Kurosaki on. We need his help. And Uehara is just like, oh, well, Ichigo is currently fighting against a Quincy. I can't interrupt that fight right now. We do have another scene where Killhei does attempt to use the medallion to steal Ichigo's Bankai, and it just shatters apart in front of him. And then Killhei is just now getting increasingly pissed off. He's like, damn it, why doesn't it work? Also, people have mentioned that his eyes with the lines resemble like prison bars, because he's Sternritter J, the jail, so it makes a lot of sense that he would have like prison bars as eyes. So I never picked that up. Thank you for bringing that up. Ichigo attacks him. He's like, it's still not working. Also, you might notice that the more he stays in his holy form and the more Reiatsu and energy he expends, the less, like, Ion's features are beginning to disappear from him now. So he no longer has his teeth. His bulk is like, I think, a little bit smaller. So, yeah, he's basically, like burning up a lot of Ion's power. So the Squad 12 realizes, wait, Ichigo's power isn't getting sealed. His Bankai's not getting stolen. Okay. So, you know, Uehara kind of is like, hey, the fact that you're contacting me, though, I mean, you guys are Mayuri's men, so I know the kind of risk you're taking by contacting me without Mayuri's permission. So I'll repeat my first question. How are things going over there, right? So at this point, we continue the fight very briefly between Killhei and Ichigo. Killhei's firing off laser shots. Ichigo's dodging everything. He's using Getsuga. He's just Bankai stomping him right now. And Ichigo just kind of gets him down on the ground. He's like, the other day, this other guy tried to steal away my Bankai. What is with you guys and stealing Bankai? You know, and Killhei's like, I have no obligation to answer you. Ichigo's like, could it be you guys are afraid of the Bankai? To which I'm kind of there just like, well, duh. Why wouldn't you be afraid of the Bankai? It's like the strongest technique that every Shinigami has. Why would you not be afraid of that? But Killhei freaks out. He's just like, that's not true! That's impossible! You know, I am the Quincy's fear nothing! The Vandenreich fears nothing! We fear nothing! Blah! And he just gets a hole just punched through his damn chest. So Uehara shows up with the win button. Not even the win button. He shows up with the cutscene, okay? You're like you're fighting a boss in a video game, and you finally get the boss on like 1 HP. And before you can finish off the boss, it cuts to a cutscene where the boss is defeated by somebody else. That's Uehara. Uehara is the victory cutscene. That's it. It's just like, okay, Kurosaki, time to end this. All right, you got to get to the Shinigami. You got to get to Soul Society. Shinigami are being slaughtered. You got to go. It's an emergency. So he opens up a Garganta. He's like, just keep traveling straight. You'll get there. And so Ichigo's like, what? Okay. And these are some other members of the Squad 12 division. I think this is, this guy's name is like Hyosei or something. It starts with an H, and he has like a crank on his head that he like turns. We also have Rin here. Rin is really hopeful that, like, wow, Ichigo Kurosaki will be coming and save us from everything. You know what I mean? So, it's interesting because Rin's never really had a direct interaction with Ichigo, and Rin is just like, Ichigo will save us. So it's actually weird. Rin is actually one of the main characters in a Bleach video game called Bleach Dark Souls. Bleach Dark Souls, it takes place right after, you know how after Aizen defects, there's like a week or two where Ichigo and Orihime and Chad and Uryu like stay in the Soul Society before they head back. They heal up, and then before they head back to the world of the living. That video game takes place during that like brief moment when they're in the Soul Society after Aizen defects. and Rin is actually a main character there and actually meets Ichigo and pals around with him for a little while. So it makes me kind of think, like, I wonder if that was actually canon. Because if it was, then it makes more sense why Rin is just like, Ichigo will save us, you know, that kind of thing. Anyway, Ichigo dives into the Garganta, and he starts heading. My God, I love the glow of this. Also, Ichigo's not quite as good at creating a path with Reishi, so it's a little bit more unstable, but he's very serious right now, so he'll be okay. By the way that he was able to just dominate Killhei back there in that fight, Ichigo's got his Bankai, plus he's got the added bonus of the full bring enhancements of, like, strength and speed and reflex, so it's no wonder why he was able to get a 1-up on Killhei. Anyway, we have Orihime and Shad show up. He explains the situation. Urahara does. He's like, I had Kurosaki go to the Soul Society to save them. Orihime's there looking very concerned for her boyfriend. I guess are they dating at this point? Yes, that's the thing. Like, after the end of Bleach, Orihime and Ichigo, they get married, right? But we just have, like, a time skip to the future. We don't see them... We don't see their wedding. We don't get to see them, like, how did Ichigo propose? We didn't see them dating at all during their college years. So I'm just going to go ahead and say they are dating right now because it doesn't really make, like there's something added to their relationship. Whatever. Anyway, Ichigo's running through the Garganta. In the manga, they give a little bit more detail about what's everything going on. Akon actually gives, like, a full report to Ichigo that actually takes up a lot of, like, dialogue. He goes through everything. He's like, oh, the Sternritter are attacking. There's about 16 of them. The disappearance of spiritual pressures are for 2,245 officers, 56 seated officers, and 1 assistant captain. So literally, we have almost 2,300 casualties at this point in a fighting force of 3,000. Now, granted, the only Shinigami that would actually be able to stand up to the Sternritter anyway are the captains and lieutenants. Maybe some of the third seats like Ikaku and, like, maybe, like, Yumachika maybe might be able to put up a fight. But, like, yeah, those are mostly foot soldiers. But, like, all of their foot soldiers are almost, like, annihilated at this point. Those numbers keep increasing every second. You know, extensive structural damage. To what degree, we don't know. Renji and Rukia are safe. Akon does say that to Ichigo, that 1 assistant captain was not Renji or Rukia. They're fine. It'd be funny, though, if Ichigo brought up, well, which of the assistant captains was it? It's like, oh, it was Izuru Kira. I was like, oh, it was just Izuru. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, we can lose an Izuru. That's fine. He doesn't say that, but it'd been funny. You know, let's see. There are at least 16 with the enemy that possess power equal to or greater than a captain. They are called Sternritters. They are dressed in white cloaks. At this point, they have lost 0 casualties, so they haven't had a single loss, not a single victory on their side, and Akon is not very optimistic here. So Ichigo begins to run toward the end of the Garganta. Meanwhile, we have Uehara, who relays another message. He has his little portable computer here, his little portable hologram computer, where Uehara explains, okay, he was analyzing. He wasn't just sitting on his hands the entire time Ichigo was fighting Killhei. He was analyzing the battle. So while Ichigo was fighting Killhei, and while I guess he was also fighting, like, Ion and the Trace Bestia, Uehara analyzed everything. So he's like, okay, during this battle, there are 3 main abilities that the Quincy's possess that you should probably know about and be wary of. The first one is the Quincy Voltstandik, which is like their holy form and increases their power. Then there is Blut, which is the ability to increase defense. Uehara analyzed this, and he claims that there are 2 different types of Blut. There's a defensive Blut called Blut Vena, and there is a offensive Blut called Blut Artery. However, they do not seem like they can switch. They have to switch between them. They can't use them both at the same time. Like I said, at least in the manga, they use Blut Vena, like, all the time. They never use Blut Artery. Maybe it's always active, but yeah, it's never really brought up pretty much after this moment. And then finally, we have the last one, which is Bankai plundering, the stealing or the stealing of your Bankai is the only one they cannot steal, but they can steal other Bankais. It's kind of weird that also Uehara did not bring up the Sklavre ability, because the Sklavre power was also something that you definitely have to watch out for, but he doesn't bring that up, I guess. Anyway, we cut back to the tunnel, Garganta, where the opening that is supposed to lead to the Soul Society gets hit by an arrow and then immediately gets sealed up by a bunch of bars, like it's being stitched up. And then at the same time, we cut back to Wakamundo, and Uehara got stabbed with an arrow, which isn't too bad, considering that Orihime and Shad got entire holes punched out of them. So yeah, like a punch card at a freaking sub shop. There you go. Anyway, we see Killhei standing back up, And you might be thinking, well, wasn't he dead? And he's like, well, he's using an ability called Ranso Tengai, which is a power that was only ever used once by Uryu, and it's called Ranso Tengai. It means like the decapitated puppet god, or the dead deceased puppet god, or something like that. Basically, what it does is, because Quincy's can manipulate reishi, they essentially wrap their entire bodies in strings made of reishi, and so they move their body like puppets on strings. So even if, as Mayuri put it during the Soul Society arc, broken bones and torn flesh mean nothing to someone that's truly mastered it. So it doesn't matter if you're like, your spinal cord could be ripped out of your body. You could still probably move using Ranso Tengai, because it's not you that's moving. It's generating reishi that's moving you like a puppet to attack, so you can still fight, okay? And Mayuri mentions, the technique was used by elderly Quincy's who could keep on dying right until they turned to dust. Like, that was the explanation we got. So he uses Ranso Tengai. He uses his ability of J, the jail, to trap Ichigo in the Garganta. He seals up both the opening and the exit to the Garganta, as well as traps Ichigo inside of this hamster ball kind of thing, where he cannot escape. He's trapped in the jail. And then we have Killhei just, laughing maniacally like, Ichigo Kurosaki, you will be trapped forever. And he's like, I will carry out my mission done by His Majesty. And then you have no longer any means of escaping that prison. We have Orihime there on the ground. She also got a hole punched out of her by Killhei. And then we just have him still standing there. Uehara just has like one arrow in his shoulder, though. I'm pretty sure Uehara can counterattack now, but whatever. And that's the end of the episode. That's all we get right there. Here's the poem as lightning fades. And it's appropriate because the next episode is Bleach Episode 5, Wrath as a Lightning, which should be Chojuro Sasakibe's episode. If there was ever going to be an episode where they explain a little bit more about Chojuro, show his battle with Driscoll, do his Bankai up a little bit better, this would be the episode. So I'm really, really hoping it is. But yeah, that's it. That's it. And we'll end it out here with the final title card of the drawing of all of the captains. That was a solid episode. I think this is also the longest episode of BAN-KAST I've recorded so far. It's over an hour and 15 minutes long. I have to cut some stuff out, but nothing too big. In fact, I actually think I only messed up like one time that entire episode, so I'm getting more into the rhythm of doing these. There are going to be guests, I swear to God. I'm going to send some messages out. Maybe not next episode, but the episode after that, we'll get some guests. But anyway, yeah, that was Bleach Episode 5, Wrath as Lightning. I mean, Episode 5, Kill the Shadow. Next episode is Wrath as Lightning. There's a little, but this brought up a lot of things I remember asking myself when I first read the manga, when I first reviewed the chapters like 10 years ago. Like, how are they stealing Bankai? What about the Zanpakuto spirits? My God, you guys didn't plan for this very well. Why aren't you using Kido? Like that brought up some old questions I had. Anyway, thanks for watching. This will be Tekking signing out. Comment down below what